Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Welcome to Kansas City Profiles presented by Easton Roofing. As you know, if you listen to our profiles, the idea behind them is to take familiar people with great accomplishments and bring you a more personal side of what has created them as human beings, or perhaps inspired them as human beings, and perhaps there is no better example of that than today's Kansas City Profile, and actually another one in a couple of weeks because we covered so much ground. It'll be a two-parter, one of only three that we've had so far, and it is worth every single minute of it as we speak with Peter Vermes, the manager of Sporting Kansas City. His accomplishments are there. He was a standout player as a youngster, a National College Player of the Year runner-up as a college player, a U.S. national team player. He played all around the world, in Hungary, the Netherlands, MLS, became an MLS champion, an MLS Defender of the Year, an MLS Coach of the Year, an MLS champion with an MLS Cup win, and also three U.S. Open Cups for Sporting Kansas City, and prior Kansas City Wizards. He was the coach when they made that transition as well after playing for the Kansas City Wizards, among other teams in MLS. But his backstory is fascinating. The son of immigrants who had to flee communism from Hungary and come to the United States and carve out a life here. A stern father who provided inspiration and direction for him. It's all there. Fascinating stories, well told by Peter Vermes. It's going to be a treat for you to listen to part one of Peter Vermes on the Kansas City Profile, presented by Easton Roofing, right here on Danny Clinkscale's Reasonably Irreverent podcast. We're here with Joe Spiker, the president of Easton Roofing. And Joe, you worked for other companies in the construction industry. What inspired you to start your own company in Easton Roofing?
Well, you know, Danny, when you are working for somebody else, you oftentimes don't get to see the project through from beginning to end, and you don't get the final control over the customer experience. And I wanted to build a place where people can come and get work done on their house and not have to worry about being treated the wrong way, and get a good customer service experience start to finish.
The company slogan is "Where Integrity Matters." Why is that so particularly important to you?
Well, for us, what that means is treating each other with respect at work, treating our clients with respect, and making the right choice, especially when no one's looking. So when you're presented all the time as a contractor with choices that have to be made, are you going to make more money on this if you cut a corner? And we just wanted to make a place and a slogan that said to our people and to whoever is our customer, we're not going to do that. We're going to make the right choice regardless of profit.
Easton Roofing, where integrity matters. Cinematic Visions has been an affordable solution for professional media production in Kansas City since 2003, offering award-winning video production and creation, as well as a wide array of digital and social media management services. From planning, scripting, filming, editing, and post-production, to delivering your product to a watching world, Cinematic Visions will provide professional and affordable services for you and your business with the necessary return on investment to make it all worthwhile. Cinematic Vision's goal is to unlock the power of storytelling through video and a strong online presence for your company. Beyond the numbers, they want to inspire and evoke your clients to feel and act. Let my friends at Cinematic Visions embed your brand where it belongs, in your customers' minds. You can find them online at cinematicvisions.com or with a quick phone call at 816-600-6300. If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you. Peter, I don't think we can tell your story without starting with the story of your parents and how they came to this country under extreme duress. Your father, somebody who was resisting the communist regime, was on lists and was in danger. And on his third attempt, finally made it to the United States. Just want to know, was that a story told in your family? Was that sometimes people are, and parents aren't forthcoming about those kind of things, and you have to find out later. Was that a big influence early on in your life, or did you have to find out about it later?
Yeah, so I'm a big history buff, and I know when you look at or you listen to a lot of guys, especially from World War II, they never speak about it. You know, I'm very familiar with that idea. I love history, and so yeah, it wasn't something my parents talked about at all. and we as I guess as a family, there was four of us kids. We started to inquire because it wasn't normal. You know, our parents had the strong accents. All the other kids in my neighborhood were American. Their parents didn't have the strong accents. And so why were we different? You know, and so I think it was a question. And interestingly enough, when, you know, my parents were, especially my father, he was very leery of going back to Hungary ever to visit, because at that time it was under communist rule, and he was afraid that his name was still on a list, and if he came back into the country, that they would grab a hold of him and it'd be done. And so when my parents got their, you know, they had their U.S. passports, my father did some inquiring with the U.S. Embassy and immigration, and found out that, look, you know, there's rights that you have being American citizens. So when you go there, immediately you'll register that you're in the country, and, you know, we can do things to make sure that that doesn't happen. Now, I don't know how far the Americans would go to try to pull them out, but, you know, it felt a little comfortable. So I went back there the first time when I was 9 years old.
And you went back on multiple occasions, right?
I did thereafter, because that was the first time they went back. And once they felt comfortable with it, but I will tell you that I can remember, and I'll explain you this really quickly. It's hard to see, but so there was an insignia. It's like a logo almost, if you will, that the Hungarians used as sort of the resistance, kind of like their logo for if you're in the resistance. And I remember being at my uncle's house, and this is when I was 9 years old, and it was midday, and him and my dad were talking about back then when they were doing that, and he said, I have something to show you. And so he closed all the blinds in the house, and he went to a wooden floor and popped up one of the slats, and in there he pulled out this, like, almost like a plaque, but it was a piece of wood, was engraved and painted with all the colors, and it was that insignia. And when I'm 9 years old, I have no idea.
Right.
And when I think about it today, how fearful they still were, and that was 1976, how fearful they still were of the retribution that could come with having that insignia, you know, associated to you and in your house. It was unreal.
Yet it was very important for them to go back.
It was, because still had a lot of relatives. I also think it was really important for them to take us kids and introduce us to where they were from. The great thing is my dad's brother took over the house where he grew up in. Now, obviously, he modernized it and added on or whatever, but my grandmother lived on a wing of the property.
Right.
And so it was where he grew up. And actually, when I would go back, actually, I was talking about somebody this the other day. We were talking about what has been lost worldwide is sort of the street soccer that a lot of kids grew up on.
Right.
Well, when I went back there, the first time, the road that was in front of my uncle's house was still dirt. And the kids would play soccer with a ball that was made up of everything. It wasn't a soccer ball, because they didn't have the money. And, you know, again, developments aren't the same. So my uncle's house was nice, but there could be houses right next door that weren't as nice, right? So the level of economic means for people was much different from house to house. And so anyway, all the kids would play outside, and I would go there and play with them, and we were playing with this ball. And I remember the next year when I came back, I actually brought a soccer ball. And I remember coming out to the street the first day when they all heard I was coming back, and I brought the soccer ball, and they couldn't believe it. Like, oh my goodness, a real soccer ball. We played with that because I was there for a whole month. We played every single day. And that ball was beaten up after 30 days. I came back a year later and brought another ball with me. They still were playing with that ball, but you should have seen it. It didn't even resemble a ball. It was amazing, but it was those are great experiences for me.
What are your first memories of Willingboro, New Jersey, your home?
So really, my home is Delran. I was born in Willingboro. That was where the hospital was. Okay. I was born in Delran, I grew up in Delran. Interestingly enough, it's a really, and I know this is crazy because it's not at the time, but it was a really, really strong soccer town. A lot of that, I think, because of my father.
Mm-hmm. Your dad was a professional soccer player.
He was. And so that was his love. What I was fortunate, and I think about it this way, growing up, for me, what was fortunate is so I have, and the line goes, I have an older brother, older sister, and then another older brother, and then me.
Okay.
I was the one that was dragged to all my two brothers' games and practices.
How much older were they than you?
So my oldest brother's 10 years older than me, and my other brother's 5.
Okay.
But I went to all their training sessions as well, and I would train with them, and I could compete. That was the difference. Like I could play. Now physically, I couldn't. I could get knocked around, but it's where I learned a lot. And so I remember being able to play in all their training sessions. And then I also remember, look, there's a lot of things that hit home with me, but the things that really hit home with me are things that I'm still associated today with, and that's soccer. And so I think about all the kids that I started out on my first club team, which back then, which is even still today, when you wanted to play a competitive team in club soccer, you had to be 9 years old. Well, my first team I was on was 5 years old. All those kids that I started with, I played with probably 90% of them in my high school team as well. And so I still have a strong connection to a lot of those guys. They're not playing today, but, just still as people. And it's great. It's great that I have that connection.
Your dad was a pretty tough guy. I think I read a quote one time where you said, and you used the word tough twice, tough son of a bitch.
Yeah.
And what was clearly you took to the strong leadership that he would give you, or whatever you want to call it, but were there times that you resented it or lighten up, Dad, or what was that relationship like?
Yeah, so I always tell the story. I don't know if my older brother likes it or not, but my oldest brother was a really good soccer player, very good. His name was Erwin, really good soccer player. And the difference between him and I was that the more my dad pushed, and when I say pushed, don't think of it as, hey, you got to go out in the backyard and you got to go train today, because that was not even close to the definition. It was more of, it's probably a lot of criticism, like, hey, you should have done this in the game. I don't know why you didn't do this. Right. You need to work harder, blah, 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 those types of things. The more my dad did that to my oldest brother, the further he went away from the game. For me, my dad couldn't tell me that enough, because the more he told me, I came back for more.
Right.
And I also wanted, I don't know if it was, I wanted to prove him wrong. I wanted to, I don't know I don't know which one it was. I can tell you as I got older, I knew what it was. But the one thing about my dad is that there's no doubt I had a contentious relationship with my father, but probably not what. It's hard because people can interpret that the way they want to. I love my dad. He was a great father. He always wanted the best for us. But I never thought of our relationship as, my dad's too hard on me, or, why doesn't he stay out of my business? When I didn't like it, we either talked about it, we either argued about it, we either screamed about it, and after it was done, right? We were over it. And that's the kind of relationship that I had. My brothers as well, though, because we also had a family business, and my brothers worked with my father. And that my mom always said that, she's like, if the one thing I want for you is you never work in the family business. I always laugh about that. And she was right, because two was fine. If you had all three of us in there, probably World War III. So it was a relationship where you grew up a lot faster than you do today.
Right.
The conversations I had with my dad at a very young age, my kids never had with me, like that kind of conversation.
Right.
And so it was different, but like I said, my parents were great. I loved them. It was never like I held a grudge or whatever.
Right. Your dad was Michael. Your mom is Magdalena. She was pretty tough too, from a couple of the stories I read. She sent your brother back out to fight the bully who beat him up and stuff like that. What kind of lady was she?
Yeah. I think my mom, more so than my dad, had empathy for the fact that I think she knew that a lot of times when we were out in public and things like that, she was very aware that people looked at us differently, because you're the foreigners.
Right.
And obviously no way would it be dealt with the way it is today, right? I mean, believe me, we used to get in fights because people would make fun of our mom or dad the way they talk. And I think my mom was very aware of that, but she also knew that we needed to be able to defend ourselves. And so because she had more empathy for it, I also think that she understood that more and was more a teacher of how to deal with it. Whereas my dad was like, what are you telling me about? Don't worry, just go figure it out. Like, it was more just you figure it out.
Right.
Where my mom was more of the teacher in that aspect. And then the others, I had an incredibly close relationship with my mom. I don't know, you could say because I was the youngest, but being the youngest in my house was not being the youngest in how people think of families.
Right.
It wasn't the same. It's probably, I got beat up a lot more, I can tell you that. And I would also say that I think the time with my mom is that because she'd already been through the other three and they were older, she had a lot more experience with me.
Right.
So I think that's one of the reasons why also our relationship was really close.
You probably wouldn't want to put it this way, but you clearly were a prodigy. You played against older players. Obviously, that helps. You're scoring goals by the bushel basket, first freshman game, 4 goals and 5 assists, I guess it was. Immediately gets promoted to junior varsity. At what point in your childhood, maybe when you were playing against the older guys and competing with them, did you realize that you had something?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I was telling you the story about my first time was 5 years old on a competitive team. My dad didn't coach the team. It was somebody else. And when I got to, I think I was 7 or 8, he coached my first team. And you got to understand, I came from, I'm going to say it this way, a very, very modest upbringing, okay?
Right.
Never knew it, but that's what it was. We were a month-to-month family, okay? Never really wanted anything else. I feel like I had everything in the world, but that's just the way it was. And I say that only because I want you to understand where I'm going with this.
Right.
So I have a brother that's 10 years older than me. I have a sister that's 8 years older than me. I have another brother that's 5 years older than me. Here I am, the youngest. My dad's coaching my team. We're getting ready to start the season. And I said to my dad, and I don't know why I did this. I said, if I score 50 goals in the season, will you buy me a TV for my room? Now, honestly, I don't. First off, back then, even having a second TV in your house would be unbelievable.
Luxury, yes.
But I don't know why I said that. I don't know why. I have no idea why. So he looked at me. I remember he looked at me. He's like, "Yeah, sure, we'll make that bet. Yeah, you score 50 goals, I'll buy you a TV." Well, and I'm going to backtrack for a second. There's a couple of really interesting things that you remember as a kid. I remember my father saying to me and my brother one time, and he was very serious. There was, and it wasn't he was trying to put on a face, like he was really serious with us. You ever make a bet, I'm telling you this, you are going to make sure you can pay that bet. So you better make sure if you make the bet, you're following through because you are never going to basically back out of a debt.
Right.
And I remember that always stuck with me. And so I remember we kind of made this bet.
But what was on your side?
Nothing.
Right,
just
what
like,
I thought,
if
right.
I score 50 goals, you buy me a TV.
Right.
Yeah, sure, I'll buy you a TV. No
Okay,
problem.
right.
Because he never thought that this was even going to come close.
Right,
and so,
possible, right. It's a lot of goals, man.
It meant, and by the way, the competition was real. It wasn't, just recreational soccer. It was competitive soccer. And by the way, I was playing like 2 years up.
Right.
And so we played 10-game season. You'd have to score, 5 goals, right? every game. And so we're in the playing our 9th game, and I have 41 goals.
Ooh.
And I asked him on the way to the field. I said, "Hey, did you bring money with you?" Because obviously back then it wasn't credit cards; it was actually cash. And he said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, I want to go and get the TV today after the game." And he's looking at me like, "What?" I scored 11 goals in the game. And I'm going to tell you this goes along with that. So anyway, you can imagine, I'll get over this part. He bought the TV. It was World War III in my house because my brothers and my sister wanted to kill me, kill him. They couldn't believe it. Like, how does he get? It's unbelievable.
Right.
But the two things is, one is he followed through on the bet, even though he's probably thinking to himself, I can't believe that I got to do this, because I'm sure the money could have been used for so many other things that were important to the family. He followed through on the bet. And the other thing is that I think when I think back on it, now, after so many years of that happening, and that is, he understood that there was a direct correlation. Now, how much people want to try to massage this, and that is, when somebody has a propensity for something, right? He knew how to feed it. And there's so many different ways that he could have dealt with me in so many situations, but he understood that for me to reach the places where he probably saw where I could go at a very young age, that these are the things I had to do. And so what I would tell you is, I use that story and I'd say, to answer your question, I know it's a long, as you say, I answer these questions with a lot of info, but I would say at a really, really young age, because I remember in the when I watched the first Olympics that I really spent time on watching, it's where I knew right then that's what I wanted to do. So I was probably 7, 8 years old, that this is what I'm going to do, and I knew I was doing something different than all the other kids.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
Are you thinking of starting a new business? Does your current business feel stuck? Or are you just trying to grow what you already have? Running a business is a lot of work, and it takes the right team to make it all happen. If you're looking to grow your business, call my friends Ben and Greg over at Fuego Consulting. They put together a company that can help you reach your business goals. Whether you're looking to get online, build a social media strategy, or rebrand your business, they can help. Call Fuego at 816-663-9695 or visit them online at fuegoconsulting.com. Fuego Consulting. Let's grow your business together.
For many people, a family law case will be one of the most difficult experiences in their life. The law firm of Kenneth McRae will help you through it. Personal and effective help from Ken in concert with you will develop a unique strategy for your unique case. As Ken always says, divorce can be civil law, not civil war. Licensed in Kansas? Visit McRaeLawOffice.com or call 913-972-4765.
Hey guys, it's Brian Haney, voice of the Jayhawks, and Matt Llewellyn from the 23rd Street Brewery. Matt, I've got a bunch of buddies coming over to watch the big game, and I need some ideas on what to cook.
Hey, let me handle it, Brian.
You're going to come over and cook for us?
For you? Maybe. But you should just let 23rd Street Brewery cater it. We could bring a big pan of Bill Self mac and cheese, wings, veggies, naked nachos, and anything else you might want.
Great. Well, you want to stick around and watch the game?
No, I've got to get back to the brewery and watch it on the big screen.
The place to get great catering and watch all the games, the 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you.
Did you play other sports?
Yeah. Not even a full year. I played baseball. So I played baseball for half a season. And it's the same exact story. I actually did karate as well. My oldest brother is a fifth degree. He's a master. He's a fifth degree black belt.
Right.
My other brother's a black belt. I came about 6 months after them and started taking karate. And I was about 3 months. I was 3 months away from getting my black belt. And my dad walked into my room, and my brother and I shared a room together. And he walked in and he said, just walked in and he said, "Hey, I want to know by tomorrow morning which sport are you going to do? You're either going to do soccer or you're going to do karate. You're not going to do both. I want to know which one."
Wow.
And I won't give the punchline. You understand what I picked soccer, but I'm going to explain why I think so today. And now I'll tell you the story about baseball. Baseball is a little better. So I have a really good friend that I grew up with, lives about 2 blocks away from me. His dad was from Italy off the boat. It was great. When him and my dad got together, you couldn't even understand what they were saying because their accents were so strong. You couldn't understand a word they said. And my buddy and I, we kind of had the same upbringing. His dad was hard-nosed, all that stuff. And but his dad loved baseball. His dad was a coach. His dad kept asking my father, for probably like 8, 9, 10 years old, hey, let Peter play baseball. Let Peter play baseball. My dad would always say, nope. Always no. He must have caught him on a great day. Went to my dad, and he said I was about 11 years old, 10, 11 years old. He said, hey, I want Peter to play on my team. Let him play baseball. And somehow my dad agreed. But he said, listen, I'm going to tell you this right now. His name was Jerry. He's like, Jerry, I'm not bringing him to practice. I'm not going to any games. I have nothing to do with this. If you want him, you're going to have to figure out a way how to do all this because I won't be going to any of that stuff. Jerry's like, no problem. Pick him up. Every day I just go by, just pick him up. He's with me. Great. So I started playing baseball. And I don't know, relative to the other kids, I was a pretty good baseball player.
Well, if you're that good an athlete, you're probably...
I was pretty good, right? And so it was a Saturday. We had a game that day. And I'm at home, and I was standing outside. My dad was doing some work outside, and I said, hey, listen, I got to leave in a few minutes because, Mr. Forcellini's coming to pick me up, and I got to go to the baseball game. And so they pull up on the driveway. I'm standing there, and I got my glove and stuff in the house. And my dad said, or Mr. Forcellini, Jerry, he says to my dad, he says, like, Mike, he says, I want to tell you something. He goes, you got to come watch Peter play. He goes, he's a really a good baseball player. That's how we do it. And I see my dad. Now, again, I'm young, so I don't know. But if I think back on it. So my dad's hardly even listening to him. He says, what are you talking about? And he goes, Mike, I'm telling you, Peter is a really good baseball player. He can play here. He can do this. So my dad says to me, he says, hey, go inside, get your stuff. I go inside. I grab the stuff. My mom says something to me. I come outside. Mr. Forcellini's not there. And I'm like, Dad, where'd Mr. Forcellini go? Now I'm panicking. What happened? And he goes, listen, you're finished playing baseball. You're not playing baseball anymore. I told Mr. Forcellini to leave. You're not going to play. I was like, what are you? Crying. What are you talking about? I know why. Because I believe, he never said this to me, but I believe the reason why he did that with karate, with baseball, he did not want me to be distracted from soccer and felt that if you were going to reach the top, you needed to put everything you had into that.
So he's like 40 years ahead of his time.
Yeah. He knew. He didn't. Right. He knew. And that's why I was saying, he knew how to feed it,
Right.
He knew it.
Right. You would end up meeting your wife in high school. What was your high school life like? You've often described yourself as just so consumed with soccer that there was no other. But tell me about high school life for you in New Jersey. Was it fun? Were you a social person, or was soccer just everything for you?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a funny story, but I'll get there because the story I'm going to tell, the girl probably wouldn't like it. So, yeah, I was completely consumed with soccer. That was everything to me, right? I was a good student, but I'm going to be honest. It wasn't the thing that I was focused on. Soccer was my life. That's what I knew I wanted to do. So I would do all of my work just so I could go play soccer.
Right.
Right. So if I had homework, it was I would try to do it in a study hall at school so that after school I could go work on my game. I mean, I did everything I could to be the best I could at soccer. So I was consumed with it. Well, I really wasn't social on how you would mean. I never went to parties. I never did any of those things. Freshman, sophomore, and even into my junior year, really not at all, nothing. I the first date I had with my wife was I met her at a carnival at a church, and then a kid in our school, his family was wealthy, very wealthy, comparatively speaking, and he was driving a Mercedes, two-seater, if you will, with a little bench seat in the back.
Right.
And I remember we had dinner at McDonald's, and I rode in the back of his, car. Anyway, the real part of the story, I think, for me is that I never went to anything. I never went to any parties, never did any of that stuff until probably my senior year, where I got a little bit more outgoing in that regard, because everything was about soccer. So prior to going out with who's my wife today, and it was the end of my junior year, I was going out with this other girl, I was dating her, if you will. And I'll never forget this. And it has a relationship to my 20-year high school reunion.
Okay.
So we went out somewhere. I don't know, we went to see a movie. We came back to her house. We come in and we sit down and we're at her family room, and she's like, "You want something to drink?" "Sure, I'll take a glass of something." She goes to get it. She had turned the TV on. I picked up the remote, and I was hitting the channels. We had a ton of channels. Fortunately, which was not the thing normally, there was an indoor soccer game on. There wasn't, all the NASL and all that stuff had really died down, but There was an indoor soccer game on. And I'm watching the indoor soccer game. And she comes into the room, and she says, "What are you watching? Can't we watch something else?" And I said, No. These games don't come on. You don't see them regularly. I want to watch this game. And she said, "What are you going to be doing?" You got to think of relative again, right? What are you going to be doing in your 30s? Are you going to still be doing soccer? And it was like an epiphany. I sat there. I wasn't typical guy. I'm watching the TV, not listening, but I heard that response.
Right.
And I kid you not, I stood up. I said, "Hey, this isn't for me. I'll see you later." And I walked out, and I was gone. I saw her at our reunion 20 years later.
Right.
And I walked up to her, and I said, "Hey, I just want to let you know I'm still doing soccer." Joking. Now it was all done in
right.
because joking.
She obviously knew you were doing soccer.
She got it. So that's how fun. I was back then.
How did your relationship with your wife develop?
The thing I would say is that first of all,
clearly she likes soccer better than the other girl.
Yeah, no doubt. She's to be with me. She knew that soccer was going to be part of our lives.
Right.
She knew that.
Right.
And she was first off, my wife is incredibly intelligent. She's a CPA. When I played in Spain, she was working for the Deloitte. Back then it was called Deloitte & Touche. Now it's called Deloitte.
Right.
She was working for Deloitte in London, so she worked 4 days a week. I mean, she's a very intelligent woman. She is I couldn't ask for a better mother for my children, especially as you're around you see a lot of athletes and
right.
and probably coaches and everything else, and you know that the demand of time is incredible, and you're not around, and somebody has to truly
right.
run everything while you're there.
Right.
I didn't learn this until later, but and until probably after I was done playing, and that is, I think one of the reasons why there's a lot of difficulties in marriages in sports people, and that is because what happens is, as an athlete, you go away, you got a game, you're away, you're out of the house, but you're going preseason, spring training, however it is, you're gone for big periods of time. The person at home is making all the decisions, okay? And they're running everything. And then all of a sudden I come back home, and all of a sudden I walk in like, "Hey, we're doing this, we're doing that, we're going to go over here, we're going," and all of a sudden your partner is saying, wait a minute. Sorry, hold on a second.
Right.
I'm running the show. You think you're going to come back in here and you're going to pop in for a day and now you're going to tell us how to do all the things?
Right.
I'm being honest. I didn't really realize, I never really interpreted that, realized that when I was a player. I realized that after I was done playing. And credit to my wife, she probably realized that, but probably, I have a great, I'm a Bruce Springsteen fan, and I have a great line from that. It's, sometimes you got to learn to live with what you can't rise above.
Right.
And she probably did that at those times. My kids are the people who they are today because of my wife. I mean, she did an incredible job. She had the goal to be home with our kids when they were babies, and put her career on hold. That was her choice. Like, that's what she wanted to do. And those were all things that I wanted. So we kind of knew prior to getting married, everything that what we really were looking for in life and in a life partner. And so
how quickly did this become serious? When you know, is this something like a rocket ship or what?
So we went on that first date, and the funny thing is that I actually think that she did. I think she wanted to keep it loose,
right?
And you know, maybe a week or two later, came over our house, and obviously there were some meetings in between there, and then she then said, you know, hey, I'm ready to go out, you know, full time,
right? And
from there we were always together. I mean, we had, you know, like anybody does, we had a little breakup, but we were back together,
right?
But yeah, the final thing I would say is that what I'm really glad is that she got to know my mom,
right? She
knew my mom, which was good.
I'll get to that in a minute. Now it comes time for you to, I mean, back then you're not going to think about being an academy player or something, I guess. The track was going to be college, and you would end up playing at 2 universities. What was the process of going to Loyola, the first one?
Well, I'll back it up for a second. So my mom passed away of cancer.
Right.
And one of the things that she asked me to do, because I knew that she had terminal cancer, and I was actually at the hospital.
So were you still in the thing I read said she died when you were 19.
She did, but what happened was that my mom first was diagnosed about probably about 10 years prior to that with breast cancer, and she kind of, you know, remission, fought this, you know, for 10 years.
But back then it was more of a death sentence.
Exactly.
Right.
And so I had time with her. You know,
right.
and I was at the hospital. I remember being outside the room when they had done all these tests, and I was there with my dad, and we were outside the room, and the door was shut, and the doctors were coming down the hallway, and my dad wanted to talk to them prior to them going in to see my mom, and he wanted to know what was up. And so I was standing there with him, and I remember the doctor even asking, are you okay with me talking with your son here? And
right.
My dad was like, yeah, of course. I mean, again, because he saw me different than just a kid. Even though I was 19, he saw me different, you know. And so they told us that my mom was terminal, and you know, the best thing would be to take her home. And so my dad said, and they wanted to know if they needed to go in and have the conversation with my mom. My dad said, no, I'll take care of it. And so when they walked away, my dad said to me, he's like, listen, I don't want you to say anything to your mom right now. So we walked in. My mom said, listen, check me out. I want to get out of the hospital. She goes, I know. There's no way she heard what was going on. She knew.
Right.
And so she was strong as could be. She said, we're going to go home. I want to go home, and I want to spend my time at home. And, so what she did was we spent a lot of time talking about things. And she had said to me she wanted me to be the first Vermes to go to college, not to work in the family business.
Right.
And she knew I had these aspirations of maybe trying to go to Europe at a young age. Mm-hmm. And what had happened was at like 16, 17 years old, I went on a trip with a team. We toured Austria and Germany. I got offered in the second division in Germany in the Bundesliga.
So you could have gone.
I got offered a contract, and I declined it because I followed through on the going to school. And so I went to Loyola first. I'll be honest with you, didn't have a lot of really good direction. I was making all those decisions on my own. You know, when I talk about old school, my father had said that, hey, look, you can go to college, no problem, but I'm not paying for it. So you need to figure out how you're going to do that. Right. And he goes, because he knew of scholarships and things, but it wasn't like my parents were well versed in that world because they didn't grow up with that. So it just wasn't their world. And so I didn't have a lot of advisors around me to help me, if you will. And so I chose to go to Loyola College of Baltimore, Maryland. Actually, it was a good choice. But what I realized is that it was not going to be the place that could help push me to that next level. And so the coach at Rutgers at the time actually had coached at my high school prior to me coming in. He coached my brother.
Okay.
And he had been trying to get me to come there before I went to Loyola. I mean, he offered me a full ride. And so my mom had gotten diagnosed again that it wasn't going well. And this is all prior to that. And so it only made sense for me to get closer to home because it was only an hour drive from me.
Right.
And so all of it kind of came together.
Right.
I needed this. I also needed this with my mom. And so that's how I got back to Rutgers. And it was the best move I could have made for both because I got a chance to be with my mom before she died. And I was there, on a weekend and everything. And then I also had the chance of being in a place where it could actually help me in what I wanted to do, and that was playing the game.
How hard was the loss of your mother on you?
It was
because the process was longer. Did it make it easier? Or
not really?
No?
Not really, because the strangest thing is that I remember when I was going back to school when I was home, and you bring your laundry and everything else, and I had done my laundry at home, and I remember like saying goodbye to my mom, and I was carrying my stuff out, and I put it in the car, and I decided to go back in. And I for some reason, I went in like 3 or 4. I went out to my car, came back in, went out to my car. I did this like 3 or 4 times. And just because I had a feeling that it was the last time I was going to see her. And I was in preseason at school, and she passed. It was difficult because I was close to my mom. And, there was just a lot of things that she was never going to see. And there was a lot of things that she liked in life and that she probably would have wanted or she wanted to do. But either we didn't have the means or my dad didn't want to do that. And so I would have loved to have been able to fulfill some of those things later in life that I could have done for her after, becoming a professional and things like that.
As I anticipated, I think we're going to make this a two-parter. I very much appreciate your time, and this is a fascinating conversation, and I think it would be a good time to start off just as you're launching into the professional ranks. But your family history and your story, how special do you feel like it was to have a different upbringing and an upbringing with immigrants, and what impact do you think it had on you as you look back on it?
Probably everything. First off, my parents were extremely loving, very affectionate. As siblings, we were all very close. We still are today. As I said to you before, as much as it was tough at times, like even my dad created competition between me and my siblings and vice versa. It was the way to make us strong. It was a way to make us be able to deal in life. It wasn't just to compete kids to kids. It was to, hey, this is what life's like. If you're going to survive the world, and imagine their world, so he's in America, he's looking at a nicer world, but he's still trying to get us ready for this. And so I think all those experiences have helped me through the years. Same reason why I think the fact that, I can relate it like this. As a player, having been a foreigner in other countries, when foreign players come to our team, I was that somewhere else, so I can relate. Or I was traded. I've been traded in this league. It's not an easy thing. So when I do it, if I have to do that with a player, I have empathy towards it because I know what that process is like. But it's also not the end of the world. Sometimes it's the opening of a new door. And I think all those experiences growing up within my family environment that it was, first off, I didn't know any different, right? I mean, I remember there was a kid that lived a couple houses away from me. His name was Bobby Caluzzi. We fought, like fist fight, I'm telling you, 5 days a week. One day, his dad, but by the way, we were best friends. We played every sport in our neighborhood together. His dad one day came over. It was like a Saturday. My dad's outside working around the house. He came over and he had me and his son. He pulled me and goes, Mike, we got to register both these kids for the Army because all these two kids do is fight all the time. But that was kind of our world that we grew up in. It was the life. I didn't know any other way, but I used to go over to his house, and it was the first place I had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It was the first place I ever had tuna fish. Didn't even know what that was. I mean, because my world was, if you walked into my house, it was hungry. All the food, my mom made everything from scratch. We ate very similarly. And now as I got older, some things started to come in, like we had cereal in our house and stuff like that. But when I was a young kid, we didn't have those things. My wife, this is the first time at her house, I had spaghetti and meatballs. I was 16 years old. I had never had spaghetti and meatballs. Going to McDonald's and things like that, again, never happened when I was a kid, but never thought about it. Probably because I was thinking about soccer at the time.
This podcast was made possible by our great sponsors like Easton Roofing, the presenting sponsor of Kansas City Profiles at the Danny Kling Scale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Easton Roofing, where integrity matters. We hope you enjoyed the latest Danny Kling Scale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Come back soon for something fresh and new.